Hey everyone, welcome to Vantage Real Talks. If you haven't joined us before, Vantage is an amplifier of scalable startups here in West Virginia, and we're using this Real Talk series to chat with some really exceptional individuals. But we are just chatting with great people about the why and what drives them, their passions, and then also the nitty-gritty of their how. I don't know if you know us, but we're obsessed with entrepreneurs. And so a lot of times we find ourselves talking about how folks have gotten to where they are, how they found their thing, and exactly what it takes to build a successful company. And today I'm particularly excited to be talking with Gino Degregori, who not only has an amazing personal story that I can't wait to dive into, and has some roots here in West Virginia, but is also the CEO of Bravo Consulting Group, who they serve some huge customers, big agencies in the government, things that we may or may not be able to dive into. But let's just say they take security pretty seriously, and he's the right guy to be talking to. So it's, from my understanding, Gino, when a company or an agency brings in Bravo Consulting Group, they're bringing you in as these consultants, these experts, and getting help to think, plan, and implement things like how to handle their data and analyze that, how to help move operations to be more cloud-based, really move forward and kind of streamline all of these really complex and powerful tools to be really easy for their teams to use, which then frees up their company for more innovation and big growth. Did I get that right? Is there anything you
Absolutely,
would?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Um,
a good shout out. So first of all, thank you very much, Kelsey, for inviting me to talk. I see you guys have had great speakers coming in and chatting with you, and I'm honored to be invited and speak, and hopefully not only share my story, my entrepreneur spirit, and some of the things that we're doing with Bravo, but maybe other folks that are looking to start a business or are an entrepreneurs, kind of give them a little push so they can start their journey into entrepreneurship for sure. So, but from a Bravo perspective, we've been in business for about a little over 12 years, 12 and a half years, and serving a lot of the federal space, as you mentioned, right? Both the federal civilians, as well as what we call the intelligence community and Department of Defense. And we help them, as you said, with a lot of we've helped them with their IT implementation, and mainly on the Microsoft technologies, help them implement collaboration tools such as Microsoft, SharePoint, Office 365, getting them to Azure, and then not only getting them there, but securing their environment, building applications on top of that, and then supporting it. But then the biggest thing that we've been doing lately is helping organizations adopt the technology, because so many things are new these days. New technologies are coming out every week. Essentially, a lot of changes happening. So staying ahead of that and making sure that change management and adoption of all of those technologies is something that we've been helping a lot of those larger agencies. And we'll talk a little bit about what we're doing in Morgantown and in our commercial space in the regular industry here in a second. But yeah, that's hopefully giving an overview of what Bravo is or who Bravo
yeah,
is.
great. And then so you mentioned some of these like agencies. You don't have to name any specifics, but like what type of agencies in general are you working with in the category?
Yeah, so in the DoD, Department of Defense, we're supporting the Department of Army, right, down in Fort Bragg. We got some folks out, several folks supporting that organization. We're also in the intelligence community. We have several three-letter agencies, since this is going live, I can't share too much on that. But there are some really interesting organizations that we're supporting, again, with our, solutions, collaboration solutions, applications, and collaborations, right, as I said. And then on the federal surveillance, which I can speak, we support USDA. We got several prime contracts there supporting those organizations, again, with cloud support application. And then we're also supporting NRC and a couple other smaller agencies as well. So.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's great. So these folks are pretty serious.
Yeah.
And I want to, certainly pick your brain a little bit about, thinking how to implement all these tools, how companies should be thinking about these things. But I think first I'd love to kind of rewind and go back to the beginning. So I know you were born in Lima, Peru.
Yep.
And would you mind kind of talking about that and what those next couple decades looked like?
No, no, absolutely. And I appreciate you bringing me back all the way back. And essentially, it's good. It's I was born in Lima, Peru. Came to United States on January 25th, 1991. And I didn't know a word of English. I think I knew a few words here and there, but I didn't know any of those. My dad, my mom, and my sister, and myself. And we came, as far as I was told, from one way of discussion with my parents, is to have a better life, right? A lot of stuff, economy wasn't doing very well in Peru, and to give us an opportunity. And my family was, I would say, middle class in Peru. So and my dad kind of managed several banks out in Lima. And when he came here, he humbled himself, and it's a big lesson for me right now as an entrepreneur, where he was in suits every day. I saw him in suits every day, and then all of a sudden he didn't have, the language, so he had to find a job, right, to support us, to get, to make sure we had food and shelter and all that stuff. So he took a job as a dishwasher, right, from an executive level to a dishwasher here in the United States in a restaurant here in D.C. And, it taught me a big lesson. He took me there one looks, he told me, son, this is the land of opportunity, right? Take advantage of it. That always has been fueling me and driving me essentially to become the person that I am, and continue to be, because, very thankful for him and my mom. My mom, another thing I want to share with you as it relates to that and has made me who I am is, my mom is a very persistent and persevering individual, always on top of me, with schools, with different things and activities I was doing. And the big thing that she always told me, work very hard, but don't be afraid to ask for help. If help is, needed, right? Don't be proud, because there are a lot of people that are willing to help, but don't forget there's a difference between help and asking for a handout, right? Never ask for a handout. There's a big difference between those two things. That always, I've been, had been blessed and had the opportunity to I met several good people throughout my career, whether it was in high school, in college, as an entrepreneur, out of my business. So just sharing with you a little bit of it, the transition of my life, who I become so far.
Yeah. I mean, that's amazing, right? That idea of ask for help, but not a handout, right? That line is it's a really important distinction, because I think a lot of young entrepreneurs and people my age, there's people, different generations will say, oh, the, younger generation is asking for too much help. But meanwhile, we're also learning this wisdom of it is really important to be able to lean on people when you need that help. And but that distinction between help versus a handout, I think, is really powerful and kind of gets lost in that conversation sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to add to that, it's like, and that's how I treat, when I build partnerships out there, when I do something, I always see what's the value I'm bringing as an individual, as a company, right? That creating that win-win, right? Is because it's not about, hey, just give you an example. If I'm, just getting started and say, hey, I'm just getting started. Do you have a contract I can, perform under your contract, right? That's potentially can be perceived as as a handout, right? Compared to like, hey, partner, look at the skill sets that I have. Look at the idea of the components that I can bring value to your contract, to your team, right? There's a difference, right? You're providing value. You're asking potentially for help too, but you're bringing that value of your skill set, of who you are and what you can bring to the table, and then creating that that win-win at the end of the day.
So. Yeah, absolutely, and it's all about kind of that framework and that story of how you're communicating those things, because like you said, it could be a sense of how you say something that shows that value that you're bringing to the table, versus not. But okay, so you come to the U.S., you have your family. It sounds like your parents were incredibly hardworking, and really you all were probably tight-knit through this process, I have to imagine, moving to a new place and kind of taking on a new place together.
Right.
And then I know you ended up at undergrad at WVU. So I guess, could you talk a bit about what your time at WVU, maybe how you ended up there or what you studied?
Yeah, absolutely. So just to add a little bit more, so came here, you're right. We were close, working hard, parents working two, three jobs to make sure we're doing well, and I've always done so many things, always stay busy, right, to keep me out of trouble. Uh, and and I did apply to WU. I was always wanted to become an FBI agent, interestingly enough. That like I had that vision, right? Always to kept me, it actually kept me out of trouble because I was like, I know I need to keep that right path in order to become an FBI agent. And when I saw the program the W had as it relates to forensics identification, way back when in the early, 2000s, late 90s, and I was like, oh, I'll apply there. It sounds like a good path. Well, I came to WU, got accepted, and I took chemistry, and I love math and I love everything else, but chemistry was one of those things that it was not for me. But I'm grateful that I took that chemistry class because I actually met my wife in that chemistry class. It was
Hey.
college, right? And she was sitting there in the front, and we met her, and the rest is history. But going into WU, I loved, not only met my wife there, but I loved the environment. I enjoyed, going through my education there. My wife was doing a 5-year program, getting a master's in secondary education, and I was actually in the business school. So I finished my undergrad in 3.5. Accelerated that to match. I'm always been competitive. My wife was finishing in 5 years. Okay, how can I do the same thing? And I finished my undergrad in 3.5, and I was fortunate enough that I got accepted into the master's in software engineering at WU, with a lot of help. Shout out to Dr. Kleiss. She actually helped out there, and we were able to do my master's degree in a 1.5 years. So I did complete my master's degree as well in that timeline. And but one thing I've always been an entrepreneur and thinking of different ideas. While I was doing my master's, I got an opportunity to work as the director of technology for Incubator, the WU Incubator. I don't know if I shared that with you. And I did that for a little while, and I saw an opportunity that as an entrepreneur, it's like, what can I do while I'm doing?
All right. Sorry, y'all, little technical difficulties. Classic. Everyone's fighting for the internet around here. It's dog eat dog world. I know I'm in like an apartment complex, and I'm convinced my neighbors are encroaching. Every once in a while, I'm like, did they get in on my Wi-Fi? I think so. But anyway, so we were chatting about your accelerated degree at WVU and kind of that competitive, you found a way to get that software engineering degree. Yeah. Of course, now you were starting to go into that entrepreneurial mindset and helping out with the incubator at Tech Transfer. But of course, I must ask, like, if your competitive nature, who did better in chemistry, you or your wife?
Actually, we both ended up dropping the class.
There you go. Priorities. You're like, all right, I found somebody. It's
Right. It didn't work out. I was like, all right, can't pay attention. We'll move on to the next class.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So, but yeah, coming back to the entrepreneur side, so I was helping kind of set up the whole wireless network, computers, and all that stuff. Doing it as a director of technology there. And I saw an opportunity as broadband was coming, into people's houses and small businesses. So I started a business in West Virginia while I was doing my master's I call it Inconet, and essentially was deploying and configuring wireless access points and routers for professors actually. Some of the professors that are still professors there were my first customers. So I took advantage of that, and it didn't, it's like, think about the Geek Squad. It was the early stages of Geek Squad, right? Kind of setting things up, kind of configuring things, I didn't continue to pursue that, but it was a good experience. It led me to, it kind of walked me through the steps of how to start up a company in the state, taxes, all that fun stuff, right? Admin stuff. So that I was able to get a taste of it. Then I graduated from WU mid 2000, I think it was 2004, and I came out to work here in the DC area. That's where I grew up essentially. I forgot to mention that, and worked for 2 different federal contractors. The first one was a mid-sized company. I was the developer building great solutions for public safety, a lot of police departments, different states, the FBI and all that fun stuff. They gave me a lot of experience, but I was like, again, entrepreneur spirit. Like, what can I do to kind of, drive my own ideas and my own things? And while I was working, I created several other kind of online sites that I thought, could do well. My biggest lessons, I was building a site for kind of the Hispanic community to find kind of realtors and people with finance and all the different things, loans and stuff like that. And it took me about 6 months or 8 months to develop the infrastructure, the application, right? I was just cranking away evenings and weekends. And, as they say, you build it and they come, right? Nope. They did. I was like crickets after that. I was like, all right, ready to roll it out, release date, and I did a little bit of marketing and a little bit of sales, but not much. And then the biggest challenge is like you have to market two different customer types. You have to get the customers, like the users, into convince them, hey, we have some great people, and I also have to convince the vendors to join that, right, to see what's the value and all of that. So huge lessons learned for me. I was like, okay, never doing that again. Waiting until it's a perfect solution to roll it out. Roll out a little piece, call it version 1, and then kind of figure out, what we need to do next.
Yeah. Is this like, now did this hit you like midnight on month 6, you're working on this and it's just not happening? Like, paint the pit. Like, what were you thinking at this point? I mean, you had put in a ton of your time and energy, and all of a sudden it's like it's not working. I think now you've gotten a lot of great lessons, but probably in that moment it was a bummer.
Oh yeah, it was the bummer. It's like, all the hard work. But you know what? I see challenges as opportunities, right? That's the mindset too. As an entrepreneur, you have to have the stomach, you have to have the mindset in order to push through those challenges that are being faced, right? And those failures are just, things that you learn, right? From and what not to do, right? And ever since then, as a developer, I'm like, we don't need to build a perfect ship, right? And ship it out. We have to just build like an iterative, right? The whole agile approach. Build a module, build, a piece of it, prove it out, and fail fast. If it didn't work, let's try something else, right? So that was I'm not sure if you're familiar from my software. You got the waterfall and you have the agile, right? The waterfall is the old school where you get all the requirements and then the user didn't get their stuff, until months, right? And by the time they got it, it's like, that's not what I wanted.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But no, so after doing that, I was like, okay, well, let me not try that again and see something else. So I went to a smaller company. That was year 3 after I graduated. Went to a smaller company, about 15 people or so. And
so you started working for a company. You became an employee.
Second. So while I was doing that work, I was still employed for this mid-sized company, right? I worked there for 2 years. I'm like, okay, there's an opportunity for me. I want to do something in the federal space, but I want to learn a little bit more. So I worked for a smaller company to see the ins and outs, and I learned a lot, what to do, what not to do, and stuff like that. So I picked up a lot of the things, and then I was able to drive a lot of opportunities. I was like, okay, this is easy. I can do this. And 2007. I was able to, my wife was 8 months pregnant with my second child. And I said, all right, we're starting Bravo Consulting Group. Let's do it.
Perfect time to start your company, right?
It's like anything else. When do you have a kid? When do you buy a house? When do you start a company? Anytime. You just got to do it, got to jump. So 12. I can't believe it's been 12 plus years, and my market is my son, who just turned 12 also. So it's which is exciting to see that his growth and our growth and different things. So
where did you, as you're thinking about, you're working for this smaller company and you're having that entrepreneurial brain you've kind of always had that's running in the background, thinking about things. Where did you get that confidence to say, okay, I'm not going to just work evenings. I'm ready to I want to do something. I'm going to take this on full time. Yeah, I've got it. My wife is 8 months pregnant, but I can do this. Where did that confidence come from?
Yeah, and like I was saying, as an entrepreneur, you have to have the stomach, the mindset you have to believe in yourself, right? And your skill sets, right? If you feel like you're confident in the things that you're doing and the value you're providing, as you know, that's what kind of drove me into, okay, I can do this, from a consulting perspective. Technology is constantly changing. I can come in and support, and develop some code or whatever it is, and can bring that value to my customer, right? And my first customer essentially was a large federal contractor. And we helped them develop, I was one of the developers at that time, develop an internal system that essentially managed a lot of their federal contracts, so it allowed me to learn, kind of, I say, gave me a PhD of federal contracting, because I needed to understand the back end, right, and how to build a system and solution that they're supporting the federal government, right? So that continued, it just gave me more ammunition to be like, okay, this is the right thing that I'm doing, and it's, it propelled me to get deeper into supporting the federal government.
Yeah, and I think, hearing you talk about this, it's clear that you have kind of the technical background, and you were, working through all of this coding and understanding the inner workings of federal contracting and how to kind of manage that whole pipeline. But then at the same time, it's, you've been extremely successful with your building the team you have today. You clearly have these leadership and communications capabilities. As we head to talk a little more about, Bravo and some of the trends you're seeing, what have you found kind of internally to be important in that leadership role, and as you grow a team and think about those things?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for that. So for the past almost 13 years, I've grown a lot, not only from my skill set, but as a leader, right? I did have a partner when I started this company, so I learned a lot from him, and we're able to do a lot of great things. 10 years of the 12, we were together. 2 years ago, he moved on to other things, but I was able to build that relationship, the confidence, right? I told you I had a confidence to start it, right? But then I'm a natural introvert. Yeah, I got to tell you, I don't like the limelight. This stuff is kind of like, whew, I don't know about this.
You're doing great.
But thanks. But obviously, I'm still confident, and I can, I can take on anything. I have no problem with that. But it's just as an introvert, I had to work through that challenge, right? Of okay, communicating, and being able to lead people, lead companies, this company. And for the past 2 years, as I was on my own, now driving the ship, right? Essentially, people look to me and it's like, okay, what next? And I'm like, okay, here we go. and it's what I found is in any company, and I'm also self-help kind of. I read a lot of books, a lot of audiobooks, and I'm always looking to improve myself, right? Not only from my leadership perspective, my skill set, and everything else. And what I found is that it keeps going back to, as a company, as you're leading a company, it's about the culture, right? Culture in your organization. What is the culture that you're trying to build, and the type of people that you're trying to have within your organization? So, the culture that we have now that we had 12 years ago is different, right? And good or bad, it's just different. That's what I want to say. And one of the things that I'm seeing now is my personality, as I'm coming across in leading the charge, is making sure that my folks, I tell them, I meet with them every week on Fridays, right? Friday mornings, I think I share with you. And, we get together, we talk about different things, about updates with the company or little different projects. And at the end of the call, there's 3 things I leave him with. And this is very powerful because it's the stuff that we're trying to incorporate within the culture. Is I leave him with, be kind, bring value, and rise together, right? Those are the 3 things that, for me are very important. For Bravo's culture is very important. Right? So be kind, always have the best intentions. Just because you're running a business or you're doing business, it's not a cutthroat world. It may seem as that, but we can make a difference, right? As leaders in this organization, as leaders supporting our customers, working with our partners, we can still be kind and work through different things, create that win-win scenario, right? Bring value is another thing that I kind of really emphasize is for everything that we do, right? You asked earlier, it's like, what makes you comfortable? It's like, it's the value add that I always think that I can bring to the table with my partners, with my customers, with the employees. So I tell my folks, if you're looking at that, make sure that if you're looking at bringing value, always look at how you can bring value to your customers, to your team, to yourself, right? And to the people around you, right? And then the last one, rise together. I can't do this by myself. I can't run a company. I can't, continue to do the things that I want to do, to create a vision with the right people along this, along with us, right, and with me. So it's rising together. So whatever I'm doing to increase my capabilities, I'm trying to push and invest in my folks, to kind of grow together with me. Is that, as I mentioned, is a big thing for me is creating leaders within this company, creating leaders that are not only helping us internally and growing internally, but helping our customers and then, people around, the world essentially at the end of the day, right? Because we're working 40, 50 hours a week, um, you have to build that chemistry and that culture to be successful and to be happy. And if you're not happy, I say to my folks, let's figure something else, right? If you're not happy in what you're doing, what are the other areas that you can help with in the organization, or somewhere I got no problem. That's the level of transparency and the level of environment culture that I'm trying to create. So sharing a little bit, for the folks to know. So.
Yeah, no, it's incredibly helpful, right? Because we have a lot of entrepreneurs watching and in Vantage, which, I mean, I don't know if I mentioned this, but we're lucky enough to have Gino and Bravo as a part of Vantage Ventures. But we've got a lot who are at all different stages of their companies and those first takes at building a team and figuring out how do you think about creating those leaders and encouraging a transparent environment where people can thrive and really that brings innovation, right? That sense of and I think you spoke a lot about this idea of just internal innovation, which I think, as we look at Bravo and what you all are doing, so much of that messaging is allowing for innovation, allowing space for companies to kind of innovate and accelerate what it is their mission is around. Right. And, I'd love to hear from you, for those of us not deep in the software world, right? What is it about taking a company to be more cloud-based and you're thinking around that? Why would a company or should a company think about, those processes and kind of the benefits there?
Right. Great question. Before I dive into it, I want to share a little bit more about, what we're doing in Morgantown and our relationship with those, just a little bit, and then I can kind of dive into the question you asked. But as you know, I graduated from WU, and one of the things that I've always tried to do is try to connect, with the university, one way or another. We have a great WU alumni, folks here in the DC area, huge, right? So I've always been, I met some great folks, great entrepreneurs as well, and one of the things that's a goal for myself is to create a better relationship with the school through Bravo. Right now, opening up an office in Morgantown. And creating, so I've been supporting the government for the past 12 plus years, but the past year or so, we are pivoting a little or expanding and into the commercial, right? The regulated industries, right? Bringing 12 plus years of experience, getting the government to the cloud, securing their environment, doing the same thing to small to medium sized or even large organizations, right? And working hand in hand with Vantage Ventures, with the university, working with the master's degree, the MBA program, the cybersecurity folks, the data analytics folks, all the professors I know, and one of the things that I'm trying to do is create that innovation lab, right? The Bravo Labs, as they call it, as we're calling it internally, to build a great process, not only to help Bravo, but then also to generate jobs, right? At the end of the day, my wife is from West Virginia, and I call myself adopted West Virginia, right? West Virginia. And I love the state, I love the school, and all the things that I'm putting my energy in is not only to help grow the company, but provide some value add to the state, by generating jobs. We have about 5 to 6 people now working out of, in the Morgantown area. And, I want to continue to grow that. And this, and on the commercial market is, I mentioned to you, I think last time, is what we're calling Bravo On Demand, which is our commercial product service offering that are helping organizations, small to medium and large organizations come in. It's a subscription-based kind of model, right? But coming back to answer your question is, why would organizations now need to go to the cloud, right? Or if they're not, they are now, and they're being forced into that environment because of what's happening with the COVID. The past few months have changed the framework, right? The mindset of A lot of companies out there were afraid, of going to the cloud. I want all my data to stay in my environment. Why do I need to go to the cloud? It's not secure and stuff like that. Now with everybody being forced to now be remote, that's been a challenge for a lot of organizations. And the reason they need to go cloud is to reduce costs essentially on the footprint of the data center or their servers and stuff like that, and being able to move all that on-prem servers and applications to the cloud. There's a lot of things, Microsoft and Amazon and all the other folks, providers the cost continues to reduce, right? But you have to manage it correctly. So helping our small organizations get to the cloud and then securing it is a big thing, right? So it's a step that we have to follow, obviously, right? And it also goes back down to like the adoption and making sure that people get to the cloud, we secure the cloud, and then we adopt all those technologies. So at the end of the day, their users and their folks can, like you said, we can focus on their mission, right? And their mission is, when you're in the commercial space, is profitability, right? Focus on your customers and don't worry about a thing when it comes to the infrastructure and the IT and the cloud and security. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of overview.
Absolutely. And I mean, right, cybersecurity, it's been a hot topic, but I think, right, and as you're seeing even now as we move kind of super virtual in the past, we're in week 7 or 8 of quarantine and truly doing everything. Here we are talking across and people thinking more and more about, how much data is out there, whether it's personal or for a small business. I can't help but think that you all have, probably a lot of work ahead of you of helping, helping to keep those things secure and all of that. And, yeah, I think what you mentioned is really interesting, hearing you talk about the kind of alumni network and that connection back to West Virginia. It's something that we hear so often, a lot of businesses and entrepreneurs saying, yeah, there's something particular about West Virginia and West Virginia alum or adopted West Virginians, chosen, West Virginians because they chose to be. It's even better. And that just there's such a strong bond there and such a real desire to help each other and to come back and work together on whatever new projects rise. So it's great to hear that has kind of been your experience as well. A couple of questions have been coming in. So if you have something to say, but I'll just switch over.
I want to add one more thing to that point, though. It is a strong alumni, and it's a strong, and I got to tell you, the last 2-3 years maybe, it's I give some credit to Javier, Dean Reyes, who kind of came, great vision, great individual, has helped us drive a lot of those things that the momentum, right? Because I've always had the relationship, but I felt like this past year has been 180 night and day, and it's been kind of, I wanted to give a credit to him, but also with Chambers, right, looking at providing the support. I mean, for the folks out there listening, I mean, Morgantown, West Virginia as a whole, there's a great momentum right now. It's a lot of great opportunities. I am working side by side, but it's about, for me, the why. I always look at why I'm doing this, and for me is, we can create a phenomenal economy. We can boost a lot of the economy, create jobs, a competitive market, and leveraging the skill sets that the students are coming out and working with them. I mean, the people that I've been able to hire as interns or full-time, they're all from West Virginia. And I'm one of the hardest people that and the smartest and hardest people that I have in my staff that I continue to push and help us drive, and it reminds me a little bit to connect that immigrant mentality, right? Coming into this world, to this United States and not knowing a language and adapting to those things, it's similar to West Virginia with that chip in your shoulder. It's like, no, we can do so much, right? People don't take us seriously, and there's so much opportunity out there. So I'm sure you can feel my passion. I'm doing whatever I can to support it, to create jobs, and to do a lot of things and bring other partners, into this environment to help the state and the school.
Yeah, no, and that's amazing. I mean, I feel the same way. I know I'm over here like swelling up with, pride because I feel so similarly, it rings so true. And it actually, a couple of the questions are right on that topic.
Okay.
Someone asked, what do you look for when you're hiring a new team member as small companies go to grow?
Okay. Big thing for me is really like passion. I'm always looking for that individual who, like, is there something that drives them, right? Like, is it technology? Is it process driven? Is it quality issue? I mean, all those different things. When I ask questions, it's like, what do you want to not? It's not a typical question. What do you want to be in 5 years? But it's like, what drives you? What do you enjoy doing? Some people, it's like, oh, leave me alone and I can code whatever you want. They're passionate about the development, right? And that's great, right? So those are the good people that are constantly looking to learn, right? The big thing for me is, in addition to the passion, is are they learning every day, right? Are they looking for ways to enhance their school, right? The classes they're taking, right? Are they doing internships? Are they doing all the different things? So those are the kind of things that not only gives me a different perspective of those individuals because of that initiative, but then folks like that, they're going to continue to excel.
Yeah, absolutely. And then another one, is there someone in particular that you follow closely or you try to emulate in your leadership style?
Good question. So as I said, I'm an introvert, right? And I'm always looking at different folks. I really like, the new Microsoft leader, Satya, right? He's all about collaboration, right? And the way he thinks on being able to, what he's done in the past several years, bringing all the different technologies, whether it's open source or not. I love what he's done, the inclusiveness, bringing everybody together and working together for a better technology solution, future, or whatever you want to call it, right? And that's who I kind of look up to and try to kind of do those things in the ways that I can do the same thing, right? Work with my partners, work with the vendors, and create value add to my customers at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And with you, speaking of, I know Microsoft is kind of that suite of products is something that you all work really closely with. But things are ever changing, right? So in this world where it feels like new rollouts are happening by the day and the whole landscape is shifting, how do you stay ready and dynamic to be out front of right on that cutting edge on behalf of your clients and customers?
Fair enough, and that's essentially the value from I was mentioning Bravo on Demand. That's one of the things that we look to, right? We provide that innovation to stay ahead, right? To stay ahead of the technology, because you're right, things constantly change. Even within Microsoft, right? Office 365 and Azure, they constantly have new releases every week, right? Every other week. Same thing with like Amazon, AWS, and others, right? You have to constantly adapt. So staying ahead. And working with universities and with special projects and always investing in your folks from training, right? You have to train your folks to stay ahead of the curve, and making sure that those investments are there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think it's really great to hear your insights, how you do that, everything from building that team culture where there's that passion and drive and that all comes together to, I think help stay really dynamic, and the way you all have been able to expand and grow and pivot in response to different things is super inspiring, as well as your personal story. And we didn't even get to talk about the fact that you're a pilot. That's like such a fun fact that I just learned this morning. Is Gino's like ready to fly? You're in outside DC right now, but could fly over to Morgantown whenever.
Yeah, no, thank you for being. So I've been flying for 8 years. Before my third kid was born, I was like, if I don't do this now, I'm never gonna do it. So right before, like, I think weeks before he was born, I passed my private pilot, is what they call it, right? And the reason I got into it to becoming a pilot is because my wife, as I mentioned, she's from West Virginia, and I took her to the big city in DC area. And it took us about 6.5 hours to drive back where she's from, which is on the west side of West Virginia. It's at Ripley, Jackson County. And it took me about maybe 5 years until I said, okay, well, this is what we're going to do and where we're going to get it. So instead of now taking us 6.5 hours, we can be at her house in an hour and 15 minutes now. So kind of fly over the beautiful mountains of West Virginia. And with the expansion into Morgantown, it made it so much easier now. Instead of driving 3 hours, or 3.5, I can be there in 45 minutes or so, right? And it's been I've been blessed to have the opportunity to become a pilot and not only have the capability to fly to different customers' locations and be there in sooner rather than later than going through the commercial or driving and stuff like that, but then also have been able to meet a lot of other pilots that most of those pilots are similar mentality, are always driven and driving, have their businesses. So kind of building that a circle of entrepreneurs that I've been able to ask questions and learn from them. And some of my partnership, great partnerships. Some of those entrepreneurs are on the federal side. Also been pilots and have their own planes and stuff like that. So it's fun. I love flying. And if anybody out there wants to fly, just shoot me at the DM and I'll take them up.
Well, I'm gonna hop in the front of the line. But good. That hopefully means we'll, as we're slowly able to see each other again. Maybe we'll get you, over in Morgantown. It was always great having you in the space over at Vantage. But really appreciate you taking the time to chat with us today. It's been wonderful, and we'll hope to talk soon.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity, and look forward to another one. All right.
Awesome. Have a great day.
You too.